this is just a quick video to go over the 1 variable data tables and 2 variable data tables that we've been reviewing, especially going into the second exam. This, as you can see, is the exam lab review, and I'm just going to delete the data that is inside these data tables as I explain what's happening. What has been asked in this particular case is to calculate the impacts of changes in duration on the various things related to this outage. So let me first explain what's happening over here in this input area just quickly. In this input area, we have the cost per hours per tech, the number of techs needed, and the outage duration. So think this is a budget calculator if the power were to go out and the electric company were trying to figure out how much money it was going to take to fix this power outage. So how much does it cost us for each employee? How many employees do we need? And how long is this duration? How long is it going to take us to fix? Down here, you'll notice that we have the total cost per outage. If you double click on this cell, you'll see that it is taking the cost per hour per employee times the number of employees times the duration. So it's a calculation. It's important to realize that in order to be able to use these one variable data tables and 2 variable data tables, I have to have formulas that I can plug these variables into. So one of them is this total cost per outage, and another one is this over under budget. So if you double click here, you see it is the budgeted amount minus the total cost. Tells us how much we are over or under the budget. So the directions tell us that we're going to change the duration of the outage from 1 to 10 hours. So we put that variable here. Down is we go through our data table. On a 1 variable data table, all that means is that we simply have 1 variable. And that seems pretty obvious, but it is important to remember. We have 1 thing that changes for this kind of data table. So our variable is here. Here we have linked to the total cost, which again is that formula or function that I pointed to a second ago. And comparison to budget is also this other formula calculated over here. So what this 1 variable data table is going to do is it's going to take this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it's going to plug it in right here for duration and see how they change. So as I change this from 1 to 2 to 3, I could go through and write all of these down. I'll put it back as 6 just so it doesn't confuse you. But I could go through and put 1 to 10 there and write down how that changes these formulas. Well, this data table is going to do it for me all at one time. So to do this, I'll highlight my full data table, go to the Data tab, What If Analysis Data Table, and here's where the confusion comes in, right? Here's where I don't really understand what it's asking me, so I don't understand what to do. This data table is asking me, do I have a row input cell or a column input cell? So these are the questions that you should ask yourself. This is what Excel is really asking you when you start to talk about these data tables. It's first asking you, are your variables in a single column or in a single row? Well, in this data table, our variables are in a single column and lots of rows, but a single column. So that tells me that I have a column input cell. But for this column input cell, I don't just highlight my variables. Instead, Excel is asking me, these variables that I've just told it are all in 1 column. Well, what do they represent? Where are they when I'm calculating these formulas? Where would you plug in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? If you were recalculating it, where would you plug it in? So we have a column input cell because the variables are in a column, but the column input cell is the hours of duration. So it's over in B5. Our column input cell is in B5 because that's where we would plug in the variables if we were going to do this and write down all of the answers. Once we do that, we'll simply click OK and we'll get our data table. Now, if I change these formulas, these will update, but for now they are correct. This 2 variable data table works very much the same way, except that we have 2 variables. This is still duration per our directions, duration from 1 to 10 by half hour, and this is the cost per tech. So if I'm paying my employees different amounts of money, and this outage lasts however long it lasts, I don't know how long it's going to last, so I'm trying to figure out what my best bets are. How much do I need to pay people based on how long I think this is going to be? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Here in this cell that was duration, which truly could be blank because it doesn't account for anything up here in the 1 variable data table, but in the 2 variable data table, I can only calculate 1 formula. The reason I can only calculate 1 formula is because I have variables going across and up and down. So variables in a column and variables in a row. So I have two variables, so I can only have one formula to calculate here at the intersection. I can double click on this and see that it references, again, total cost per outage. So now, to do this data table, we'll select the whole table again, including the formula, go to What If Analysis, Data Table, and get the same questions again. So the questions are your variables in a single row or a single column? Well, here they're both, so I have both. But my variables that are in a single row, or my row input, the variables that are in the single row represent the cost per hour per tech. And my variables that are in a single column, they represent duration. So my row input cell is going to be B2, where I want Excel to plug in all these data is in B2, and where I want Excel to plug in all these variables is in B5. So I'll click OK and magically get my solution. So I hope that helps you to understand why we select what we do for the column and row inputs, as well as explains what we're actually trying to accomplish with these data tables.